On today's episode, Corey Pronman of The Athletic has named the Blackhawks as the top pipeline in the entire NHL.
You're Locked On Blackhawks, your daily podcast on the Chicago Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Locked On Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Per usual, a quick reminder to hit the like button, comment down below, and subscribe to the YouTube channel if you haven't done so already. If you're tuning in through an audio platform such as Apple Podcasts, Spotify, whatever it may be, please make sure to also go and rate and review the show. Those are also a great help. And last but certainly not least, got to let you all know today's episode is sponsored by Game Time. Be sure to go and download the Game Time app right now. And when you do, create an account and use the promo code LOCKEDONNHL in all caps to get $20 off to the sporting events, concerts, or theater events near you. All right, good afternoon, everyone. Again, thank you all for joining me on another episode of Locked On Blackhawks, your one-stop shop for all things Chicago Blackhawks. I hope everyone's Thursday is off to a phenomenal start. We got NFL football returning here this evening, the Baltimore Ravens and the Kansas City Chiefs. If you're wanting to place a wager down on the opening game of the 2024 NFL campaign, make sure to check out our fine folks over at FanDuel. Also, we're 1 week removed from the start of the Tom Curver's Prospect Showcase. That's going to lead us right into Blackhawks training camp opening up on September 18th, now less than 2 weeks away. Yeah, gotta love when the calendar switches over to September. And to open things up on the show here today, folks, as I referenced right off the top, Corey Pronman of The Athletic recently dropped his top NHL pipeline rankings for the 2024 season, or I guess he didn't just recently drop it. He had been revealing numbers 32 all the way down to number 1 over the course of the past month or so. And as a pleasant surprise, none other than our Chicago Blackhawks came in at the number 1 spot. Things you absolutely love to see. However, I do think I should preface, this isn't necessarily a standard prospect pool ranking that Corey Pronman went through. And the reason I say that is because for every team, he considered all players under the age of 22 years or younger. So basically, it's a U23 list, regardless of how many NHL games a player has played. If he's younger than 23 years old, they find themselves on this list. So for the Blackhawks, while Kevin Korchinski and Connor Bedard aren't really considered prospects anymore because they've already played a full NHL season, they are still part of the pipeline ranking here, according to Corey Pronman. So had Connor Bedard and Kevin Korchinski not been in the ranking, I don't imagine that the Blackhawks would have fallen at number 1. But considering those two are active on this list, yeah, I think it is a darn good spot for the Chicago Blackhawks to be in. And I'm going to talk a little bit about who I personally think have the top pipelines in the entire NHL compared to what Corey Pronman is thinking. But as I referenced, our Chicago Blackhawks come in at number 1, and Pronman referenced not only because of the high-end players they have at the top of their prospect pool, like a Connor Bedard, Artem Levshinov, who they just selected second overall, Oliver Moore, Frank Nazar, right? High-end first-round picks, Kevin Korchinski, Frank Nazar as well, too, right? So some high-end first-round selections. Then also just based on the depth that the Blackhawks have in their pipelines right now as well. According to Pronman, he had 17 players who he believes are going to be impact guys at the NHL level, in addition to a handful of guys who we think has a chance to be everyday NHLers. So not only is it the high-end skill that the Blackhawks have, but to me, I think the biggest thing that puts them at number 1 is just the sheer amount of depth of high-end prospects that they have. Outside of the guys that I just mentioned, you know, there's still Sasha Boisvert, who was a top 20 selection in this year's draft. Sam Renzel was a first-round draft pick a couple of years ago. Lucas Reichel was 17th overall. Ethan Del Mastro is a prospect I personally am really high on. Marek Vanacker is another first-round pick. Same with Nolan Allen. Drew Comessa was a second-round pick. Gavin Hayes, Ryan Green, Colton Dock, some second and third round selections who I believe could be good NHLers down the road. So yeah, for a couple of different reasons, I agree that the Chicago Blackhawks, when you consider Connor Bedard and Kevin Korchinski as part of this list, in terms of a U23, I agree that the Blackhawks have the best pipeline in the entire NHL. According to Pronman, at number 2 is the San Jose Sharks, spearheaded by, of course, Macklin Celebrini and Will Smith up front. They also drafted Sam Dickinson with the 11th overall pick in this year's draft, just acquired Yaroslav Askarov from the Nashville Predators, and then still have William Eklund, Igor Chernyshov, Leo Saline Valenius, Shamir Mukamadulin, Quentin Musty, and Philip Beestead as well. So a really sound group for the San Jose Sharks. Has them at number 2. Pronman has the Anaheim Ducks next up at number 3 with Leo Carlson, Mason McTavish, Beckett Seneca, and Pavel Minchikov leading the way, along with Stian Solberg, Cutter Gauthier, who they, of course, acquired from the Philadelphia Flyers. They still have Olin Zellweger, Gauthier, Luno Pedersen, and Kerry Terrance. Are some high-end prospects on the back end as well to kind of round out their pipeline. At number 4 is the Columbus Blue Jackets, led by Adam Fantilli and Caden Lindstrom up front, along with David Jiricek on the back end. Kent Johnson and Cole Sillinger, maybe the start to their NHL careers hasn't been ideal, but these were still guys who were selected early on in the first round. Charlie Ellick was also drafted by Columbus this year. Gavin Brindley is an offensive-minded forward who can play with some speed that we've seen have a lot of success for the United States and at the college level for the University of Michigan. They also have Denton Matichuk on the back end as well, so a pretty solid prospect pool for the Blue Jackets. And then rounding out the top 5 for Pronman is the Ottawa Senators, led by Timmy Stützle, who, yes, is still under 23 years of age, so he's eligible for this list. Carter Yakimchuk, who they took in the top 10 of this year's draft, Jake Sanderson, Ridley Gregg, and then Ostapchuk, Donovan, and Tyler Clevin on the back end for the Sens. At number 6 is the Montreal Canadiens with Yuri Slavkovsky, Ivan Demidov, who is going to be fun to watch develop over these next few years. Caden Gooley, David Reinbacher, Lane Hudson on the back end, Justin Barron, Michael Hage, Logan Mailloux. I know he's not a favorite. Jacob Fowler in net as well. Really solid pipeline for the Montreal Canadiens they've established the last few years. The Utah Hockey Club comes in at number 7, led by Logan Cooley, Dylan Gunther, Dmitry Simashev, Tij Aginla, Daniil Boot, who, remember, they took in the first round a couple of years ago. They also have Cole Baudouin, Michael Harabel, pretty decent prospect pool for Utah. New Jersey comes in at number 8 with Luke Hughes, Anton Salayev, and Simone Nemec on the back end. 2 monsters on the blue line for them, along with Dawson Mercer, who they still have to figure out his RFA contract, and then Seamus Casey on the back end. Seattle next up at number 9 with Matty Beniers and Berkeley Catton and Shane Wright leading the way. They also have Carson Rakoff and Miettinen on the back end. And then number 10, the Minnesota Wild, Central Division foe of the Blackhawks, with Zeev Buium and Brock Faber on the blue line. That is going to be a deep pairing we see for a long, long time, along with Marco Rossi, Jesper Wallstedt. That is a really good top 4 in the U23 for the Minnesota Wild, I'll tell you what. They also have Liam Ogren, Carson Lambos, Charlie Stramel. Those have all been first-round picks for them in the past. So Minnesota wraps things up in the top 10, according to Corey Pronman. As far as where I would have each of these teams ranked, like I mentioned, if you consider Connor Bedard and Kevin Korchinski as part of this list, I think because of the high-end skill and because of the depth, the Blackhawks undoubtedly have the deepest prospect pool in the NHL in my mind. I agree. I have the Blackhawks, and I really tried to put this unbiasedly, but I have them coming in at number 1. If you said San Jose has Connor Bedard and the Blackhawks have Macklin Celebrini, if you switch those two, I think it would be a really interesting debate. Then maybe you go with San Jose. I do have the Sharks at number 2, though, ultimately. I think if it's not the Blackhawks at number one, it's San Jose. They have accumulated a ton of talent over these last handful of years. Macklin, Celebrini, Will Smith are going to be a dynamic duo up front. William Eklund, a player with a lot of skill as well. Sam Dickinson shapes up to be now the defenseman of the future for them. And then they just acquired Yaroslav Askarov in net as well. They still have first and second round picks each of the next 2 years to continue to add to that prospect pool. So I know it's not necessarily the most fun thing to do, just agree with what Corey Pronman had, but that is kind of how I had things sorted out. Same with the Anaheim Ducks at number 3. I really do think they deserve to be number 3 because of the talent and the depth that they have. I think it's a pretty clear top 3: Blackhawks, San Jose, and Anaheim, which is going to make things really interesting in the Western Conference moving forward. But Carlson, McTavish, Seneca up front, they have Gauthier as well. And then just on the back end, Minchikov, Solberg, in Zellweger. Yeah, a lot of talent all over the place for the Anaheim Ducks. I do have Columbus at number 4 as well, because I think their forwards, even though I referenced Kent Johnson, Cole Sillinger, maybe not the best starts to their NHL careers. Maybe they were rushed to the scene a little bit too early, but they still have those guys, plus Adam Fantilli and Caden Lindstrom, who I know they absolutely love, plus David Jiricek on the back end, who I think is going to be an absolute stud. Gavin Brindley as well, Matichuk. I really like the prospect pool that Columbus has generated. At number 5 for me, the only ranking inside my top 5 that I have different than Corey Pronman of The Athletic, I have the Montreal Canadiens at number 5. I think they've really amassed a good amount of talent. Ivan Demidov, Yuri Slavkovsky, and then on the back end with Hudson and Reinbacher. Jacob Fowler and net 2 had a phenomenal first year of college hockey. I really like Michael Hage as well. I like what Montreal has done over there. So I have them bumping Ottawa out of the 5 spot and moving into the top 5 there. But that's how I have the top 5 pipelines in the NHL shaking out entering the 2024 season. Let me know down below in the comment section whether you agree, disagree, what your top 5 looks like, and also if you think the Blackhawks have the best U23 pipeline rankings in all of the NHL. Fun breaking that down here for segment 1, but coming up in just a moment, gonna take a quick break. But coming up when I return, I'll dive into Pronman's interesting Blackhawks U23 prospect rankings. But first, I got to talk to you all about Game Time. You shouldn't have to worry when you're buying tickets to the next ball game that you want to attend. And I'm here happy to announce that Game Time is an official authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets both faster and easier. Plus, prices on the Game Time app actually do go down the closer that it gets to the first pitch. And with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, and their lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. And I personally, I'm sure you all know the spiel by now, right? I've been using Game Time since I was back in high school, going down to the United Center to watch the Blackhawks in their glory days, or going down to Wrigley to watch the Cubbies during that awesome era of theirs when they finally brought home the World Series. And I still use Game Time to this day when I go and want to watch a hockey or baseball game, or even if I'm traveling in another city and want to see a comedy event or want to go and see a concert with one of my friends. I always check out Game Time first because it's the fastest, cheapest, and easiest way for you to purchase your tickets. I highly recommend you all go and download the Game Time app right now. And when you do, create an account and use the promo code LOCKEDONNHL. Actually, that was right. Locked On NHL in all caps to get $20 off with your first purchase. Yes, you can get $20 off to go see the Cubbies down at Wrigley before the year wraps up. All you got to do, download Game Time, create an account, use the promo code Locked On NHL in all caps. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Game Time. Back here on the Locked On Blackhawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Again, just a reminder to please smash the like button, comment down below, and most importantly, subscribe to Locked On Blackhawks on YouTube. I'm currently on the climb to 2,000 subscribers, and the start of the regular season is just over a month away. I'm going to be getting into my bold predictions for the Blackhawks for this upcoming season, as well as individual player previews, talking about what kind of numbers I expect them to put up and also the impact that I foresee them having on the Blackhawks team for this upcoming season. Please make sure you subscribe to Locked On Blackhawks on YouTube so you don't miss out on any of that good stuff before the regular season kicks off in just over a month's time. All right, segment 2. I just went through Corey Pronman's U23 pipeline rankings for all NHL teams, or I guess I broke down the top 10 going into the 2024 season. But with each team that he broke down, Pronman also released his own individual prospect ranking. So for the Blackhawks, he dished out numbers 1 through 17 in his opinion for all the Blackhawks prospects who are a part of this list, who are under 22 years of age and in their system right here, right now. And quite honestly, I found this ranking rather curious, and I thought we had to go through it here on the show, and kind of interested to see what you all have to feel about Corey Pronman's top 17 ranking. So starting things off, at number 1, I don't think it's very surprising to see Mr. Connor Bedard leading things off. Then at number 2 would be Artem Levshinov, the man who went second overall in this year's draft. Okay, I understand that start completely. Number 3 is Kevin Korchinski, according to Pronman. All right, I could understand that. Here's where things start to get interesting. Corey Pronman has Lukas Reichel ranked number 4. And listen, I love that Corey Pronman is still this high on Lukas Reichel, but to have him at 4 ahead of Oliver Moore, Frank Nazar, Ethan Del Mastro, even in my opinion, based on the year that he just had down in Rockford, I don't know. I thought that was a little curious considering Reichel was a ghost at the NHL level for the majority of this season. Yes, he is still young. Yes, he is coming back to the Blackhawks, but it really feels like it's a prove-it type of year for Lukas Reichel to solidify him as a puzzle piece here in Chicago during this rebuild. So to have him at number 4, I think is a little bit interesting. And then right after Reichel, at number 5, is Sasha Boisvert. And I know I expressed my disliking about Sasha Boisvert being picked 19th by, or I think it was 18th by the Blackhawks ultimately in this year's draft. And I've mentioned that I like the player, but to have him ahead of Frank Nazar and Oliver Moore, to me, considering the game that Sasha Boisvert plays, I mean, what's lacking in his game? It's the pace. What's prevalent in Frank Nazar and Oliver Moore's games? It's the pace they play with. And I feel like the way the NHL is going, like you really need to have that skating ability. You need to have a big motor in order to have success at this level. And Nazar and Moore certainly have that. And I think they've both have been more proven offensive players at this point in time than Sasha Boisvert has been. And I know, to be fair, Boisvert is just entering his college season now. I shouldn't hold that against him, but kind of just based on their skill sets, to have Reichel and Boisvert at 4 and 5 is rather interesting. Then coming up at number 6 is Oliver Moore. Okay, I can understand that. At number 7 is Sam Renzel. Number 8, Roman Kanserov. And at this point, I'm like, where is Frank Nazar? Number 9, not Frank Nazar. That would be Colton Dach. Rounding things out in the top 10 is Ethan Del Mastro for Corey Pronman, which I think is even a little bit too low for him. Number 11, Nolan Allen. Number 12, Isaac Phillips. Number 13, Marek Vanacker. Number 14, Frank Nazar. I literally had a double take. This is insane. This is insane. And to quote Corey Pronman, projects as a bottom 6 center in the NHL. I could not disagree anymore with that statement. But hey, Corey Pronman, listen, I'm not going to say that the guy doesn't know anything. He clearly knows more about prospects than I do. I would never say the opposite, but very head-scratching to have not only Frank Nazar at number 14, to have Frank Nazar below Isaac Phillips and Nolan Allen, even Marek Vanacker. Really interesting. Could not disagree with that take more on Frank Nazar, who I think is, whether it be in Rockford or Chicago, I think he's going to have a big-time year. Okay, at number 15, Gavin Hayes. At number 16, John Mustard, who I thought was a really good value pick this past year for the Blackhawks in the 3rd round. And then at number 17, Drew Commesso. Drew Commesso at number 17. And I know a lot of people throughout the years haven't been as high on Drew Commesso as I've been. I believe he is going to be the goalie of the future for the Blackhawks. to have him at number 17, I don't know. This top 17 is a little bit wonky. After that, under the has a chance to play in the NHL category, according to Pronman, is Adam Guyan. I would understand that. Wyatt Kaiser, kind of feel the same. Ryan Green, Nick Lardis, Paul Ludwinski. I think those three guys could be good NHLers. Lardis over Mustard, Green over Mustard. Paul Ludwinski, I have questions about him. Same with Martin Misiak. I feel like those are fourth line center type of guys that don't provide much offense, defensive minded a little bit. Samuel Savoie, I would understand that. Landon Slaggert, I think he's probably in that category as well. Big Milt, Milton Oscarson. Shout out to Big Milt. Love the Big Milt shout out by Corey Pronman, a guy we don't talk enough about. Big Milt. Excited to see him on the ice here, hopefully sometime soon. But yeah, really interesting top 17 rankings according to Corey Pronman. Certainly would not have Frank Nazar that low. Certainly would not have Ethan Del Mastro that low. I'd have Oliver Moore even a little bit higher. Reichel and Boisvert would certainly not be in my top 5. But hey, we'll see how this transpires. Probably be a list that I'll look back at if I can remember in a year's time. But yeah, definitely go and drop your thoughts on Corey Pronman's U23 Blackhawks prospect rankings down in the comments section. Frank Nazar at number 14, I think, is an absolute crime. But there's my thoughts on a very interesting list made by none other than Corey Pronman. Coming up in just a moment, before I wrap up today's show, I still have to get into the Blackhawks national TV schedule and theme nights for this upcoming season. Real quick, just wanted to say thank you again for making Locked On Blackhawks your very first listen here to start off your day. And a reminder, the Mailbag Monday is right around the corner, and so is the Tom Curvers Prospect Showcase. So is Blackhawks training camp. Next thing you know, the preseason is going to be just a couple of days away, and I know all of you viewers and listeners out there have Blackhawks questions that you want answered. So please make sure to drop them in the comment section down below. You can DM me on any one of my socials, or you can even email lockedonblackhawks@gmail.com to reach out with your questions. But segment 3, the Blackhawks had their national TV schedule get released for this upcoming season. I thought it's something that I've done for the last couple of years. I don't know how many people actually are like taking a pen and pad or taking mental notes about this, but one thing that I did just kind of want to emphasize before kind of getting into this list is it's nice to see the Blackhawks. Yes, they're still getting national TV games because they want to market Connor Bedard. Could be, hopefully will be, the next big star of the NHL. That's their main reasoning for it. However, I do feel like it's easier for the NHL and for these broadcasters to give the Blackhawks national TV games. When they had the offseason, they did, and it looks like they're going to be playing more competitive hockey this upcoming season. The roster is certainly stronger than it's been for the last couple of years. And the Blackhawks are going to be playing a pretty good slew of games on national TV here this season, starting things off on opening night, October 8th at Utah, the first game in franchise history for the Utah Hockey Club. That game will be televised on ESPN. The next Blackhawks game that'll be nationally televised is a month later on November 6th. Against the Detroit Red Wings. That game will be broadcasted on TNT as Patrick Kane and Alex DeBrincat, of course, return to Chicago for the first time in the 2024 campaign. Then less than a month after that, on December 4th, the Blackhawks will take on the Boston Bruins on TNT. 2 days after Christmas, the 27th, in Buffalo on ESPN2, the Hawks will take on the Sabres. The 29th, 2 days later, is also a nationally televised game against the Dallas Stars on ESPN. And then, of course, the Winter Classic on New Year's Eve, which I'm so happy that it's on New Year's Eve instead of New Year's Day. Afternoon game there is going to be broadcasted officially on TNT. First nationally televised game of the 2025 calendar year for the Blackhawks will be a Saturday afternoon game on January 5th against the New York Rangers, broadcasted on ABC. A couple days later, man, that's a crazy stretch for the Blackhawks. From December 27th to January 8th, they have 5 nationally broadcasted games. So that'll be a nice little holiday break for Rick Ball and for Darren Pang up in the Blackhawks broadcast booth. But on the 8th, the Blackhawks will be taking on the Colorado Avalanche at the United Center. Games broadcasted on TNT. February 1st, the Hawks will be traveling down to Sunrise to take on the defending Stanley Cup champion Florida Panthers. I believe that is also an afternoon game broadcasted on ABC. A couple days later, the Hawks will be taking on Connor McDavid and the Edmonton Oilers at the United Center, also on TNT. And then 3 games later on in the year to kind of close things up for the Blackhawks. March 26th against the New Jersey Devils on TNT in Chicago. April 2nd against the Colorado Avalanche on TNT as well in Chicago. And then one of the final games of the year, April 8th out in Pittsburgh, as Connor Bedard takes on his childhood idol Sidney Crosby in Pittsburgh. And that game will be broadcasted on ESPN. So yeah, a lot of national TV broadcast opportunities for the Chicago Blackhawks this year. Hopefully they don't absolutely embarrass themselves out there. And they only, as of now, have 2 games that are exclusively broadcasted on ESPN Plus / Hulu, which I think it's a sin to be doing this to Blackhawks fans or to hockey fans in general, and what the NFL is doing, exclusively streaming playoff games on Peacock now and stuff. Like, it's a crime to do that to fans who have been watching these teams or these leagues for years and years and years. But fortunately, the Blackhawks only have 2. Both of them come in the early parts of the season as well. The first is October 25th against the Nashville Predators, and then less than a month later, the final game on November 21st against the Florida Panthers. And for those curious as well, the Blackhawks have released their theme nights for the 2024-2025 campaign. The first one is Military Appreciation Night, always in November, 11/10 against the Minnesota Wild. Then Native American Heritage Night is just over a week later on the 19th of November against the Anaheim Ducks. The Hawks will also have Hockey Fights Cancer Night in January against Minnesota on the 26th. The St. Patrick's Day celebration, which is always one of the best days to be at the UC, is March 5th against the Ottawa Senators. And this is either the second time in the last 3 years or the third time in the last 4 years that the Blackhawks have had their St. Patrick's Day celebration against Ottawa. I remember Connor Murphy took a really bad hit a couple of years ago on St. Patrick's Day, in the celebration at least. And then also, last but certainly not least, Pride Night is the final theme for the Blackhawks 2025 campaign, as that will be going down on March 18th against the Seattle Kraken. All right, that's going to wrap up today's episode of Locked On Blackhawks, everyone. As always, thank you all again for joining me on the show. Please be sure to subscribe to Locked On Blackhawks on YouTube if you haven't done so already, whether you're a weekly, daily listener, or you're someone who's just stumbling across the show for the first time. It's 100% free, won't cost you anything, and really does help me out tremendously, especially as I'm trying to hit that 2,000 subscriber plateau before the start of the regular season. If you want to check me out on socials, you can find me at Jack Bushman 2 on X. For my Strictly Blackhawks account, you can go and check out at Talkin' Hockey for all the latest Blackhawks news and updates. So until the next episode, everyone, be safe. Have a lovely weekend. Your boy is heading down to Fort Myers in Florida. I'll be back a little bit tanner. Until then, everyone, stay safe. I'll see you next time on the Locked On Blackhawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.